Ruhee,
Yes.
welcome to the Finding Meaning in Work podcast.
Thank you, Rahul. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited.
It's great to have you. And I think the reason why I thought I really wanted to have you was I saw you speak at another event, and I think you spoke with such clarity and bravery and vulnerability,
Thank you.
and just about the work that you're doing. I thought I had to have you.
Thank you. I'm very glad to be here. And this is extra special for me because I've done many podcasts, but
Yeah.
this is my first in-person one.
Wow.
So I'm very excited.
Yeah. I'll do my best to make it special. But also we have a lot in common that I think we've since discovered since I've been in touch.
Yeah.
We're both from the great city of Mumbai.
We are?
So maybe, and we can have a conversation about this. I just want to know your experience of growing up in Mumbai. What was that like?
Oof.
It's a big question.
It is a big question.
Yeah.
There's a line, Mumbai is a city, but Bombay is an emotion.
Wow, I've not heard that, but that is so
And
true.
It
Yeah.
hits deep. And I say Bombay because it just feels more natural to
Yeah.
me. But Bombay is magical. That place will always, always hold such a special place in my heart. Every street, every suburb has a special memory in there for me. And I'm so grateful that I grew up there. And I can very proudly say I'm from Bombay. I
Yeah.
usually say in my introductions, I'm from the land of Bollywood. It's so hard to put into words, but it's such a magical place. But when I go back now, obviously things are a lot different. I moved to Australia about 12 or 13 years ago now.
Yep.
And I feel like the city I grew up in is so different to what it is now. And Australia is home for me now. But yeah, Bombay is very special to me.
Yeah. Can I ask, when did that switch happen? Like, when did you feel that Melbourne is now home and Mumbai still has that emotional resonance, but Melbourne is now home?
That is such a great question. And I would love to hear your take on that as well. So when I first moved, I moved to Canberra for the first 2 years. So take a girl from Mumbai into Canberra. That was
Wow.
a shock to my system.
That's like moving into a cabin in the woods almost.
Literally. And I'm like, why is everything shut at 4 p.m.?
Yeah.
Where are all the young people? So it was an adjustment to say the least. And then I moved to Melbourne and it was much better. But the first couple of times I went back after moving, I used to say I'm going home, which means home meant Bombay.
Yep.
Because my family was there. I don't have any family here in Australia. And I'm going home, And for the next couple of years, I kept going almost every year, visiting family. And I'm going home, and I'm going home. And then I met my now husband, and we moved in together, and we created a life for ourselves. And I think it was somewhere around there. And I think slightly before that, after some big life changes where I was in India, and then I was like, I want to go home. And then I'm like, okay, so
Yep.
I guess Melbourne's home now.
Yeah.
And I do believe and maintain that home can be more than one place. And home is, where your heart lies and where you're comfortable and where you're safe and where you feel completely yourself. And my husband jokes about it. The minute we land in India, I switch into this completely different person. You know, that Gali Ka Gunda vibes.
Same. Yeah.
Yeah, because Bombay teaches you survival. So
Yep.
I think it's that survival Ruhee that
Yeah.
kind of like, don't come close to me, I'll mess you up.
It's funny how your countenance shift, your language shifts. I mean, I grew up speaking English at home, but
Yeah.
the English is different to the English I speak here.
Yeah.
You
How
know,
is it
it's-
different?
Just the slang and,
Yeah.
the galis and, galis being bad words. And,
Yeah.
all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And what about you? Like, what's your home for you?
Yeah. So, well, I've been in Melbourne quite a bit longer than you. So I've been here 26 years, I think. So I came in, I was 17. I also, I think, left Mumbai when I was not in a good place. So my dad had passed away suddenly, and then I was running amok. I actually failed year 12, and so my mom was worried and packed me off here. Like, I got an aunt that lives in Melbourne, so I stayed with her for a bit. And that drastically, I think, did wonders for me. It improved my life. And the switch you talked, for me, happened, in 2019 when I was there for a family trip.
Yeah.
And I had this weird sensation where I felt I was regressing to that sad 17-year-old almost.
That regression is real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's when I felt, wow, I really miss Melbourne. And at that trip, I didn't have the best time because I was in this weird place.
Yeah.
But it's funny, after that realization, every time I've been back since, I've had the most amazing time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's so cool. And it's amazing how it happens almost like in the later years of the
Yes.
switch.
Yep.
It's so interesting.
So for you, what were you like in school, like in Mumbai? Firstly, which school did you go to?
Oh, wow. I'm giving away names, am I?
Yeah.
So actually
Name
went to a
names.
couple of schools. So for the first, I think till about third or fourth grade, I was in one school. And then after that, I went to a convent school in Bandra, which is...
Which one?
Carmel's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And loved it. I loved going to school. I loved my books. I wasn't like type A, like top 3 students or whatever. I just
Yeah.
really enjoyed going to school.
Wow.
But not in like a nerdy way.
Yeah.
Just to like, I loved my friends. I loved
Yep.
my books. I loved the library. I loved my teachers.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people might not relate, but I was that kid. And I just enjoyed
Yeah.
being there. And I know that is not an experience that a lot of people have. So I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah.
It wasn't all rosy. Like
Yeah.
sometimes, oh my God, the nuns can be not so nice in convent schools. But I think growing up in Bandra and like Mumbai at that time really gave me such a great, I guess, in my world, the worldview of a cosmopolitan city, what it means to show up and be different and be inclusive. So I went to a convent school. I had friends from all backgrounds and religions, and
Yep.
we just existed together, and we were friends, and it was normal. You know,
Yeah.
it was very normal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say highlights would be doing theatre. So I did plays and
Yeah.
acts and
Yep.
dances, which is that, again, that inner like Bollywood in me. And I absolutely enjoyed it.
Yeah. Amazing. So I can't relate.
I'm so sorry.
And my poor mom, who's probably going to listen to this, I hated school. And it was something for me that I had to just survive and get through.
Yeah. Do you think it's harder for guys, like younger boys?
I think to a point, because I think boys, especially when they are teenagers and, like that whole crazy hormonal change happens. And then also I went to a Catholic school as well,
Yeah.
Sacred Heart.
Yeah.
And we were like 60 boys to a teacher. And it was raucous, like it was full on.
Yeah.
And I think maybe looking back now, I am more introverted. Like now I love my alone time and all of that. And I think maybe that is what didn't gel so well. And then also I was a bit of a daydreamer, teachers didn't like that.
Like you're distracted, you're not paying
Yes.
attention.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's a bit sad. Of the one type of personality that seems fitted to schooling, it's very rigid. I feel
Yeah.
like our system.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. But I think I was lucky in that I come from a family of some resources, and there was a lot happening outside of school. So I was really into music and really into movies. My dad had this crazy video collection
Yeah.
that I
The
just
VHS.
the VHS,
Yes.
and you open kitchen cabinets and VHS
Oh, wow.
tapes would fall on you.
Nice. What was your favorite movie growing up?
Growing up,
Yeah.
probably I'd say Grease.
Okay.
It's like my sisters and I would watch that on
Yeah.
repeat,
Yeah.
and so my dad was really into Hollywood and old Hollywood, and and probably the Jungle Book, like
Yeah. Nice.
the animated version.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice.
How about you? Did you have, like, I know school was theater, and how about outside of school? Was there anything that really grabbed you at a young age?
Yeah, like I've always, I think, been a generalist by personality, but there was one thing that I always wanted to do. But touching back on the schooling, most of the time it was all rosy, but I do remember very specific times where I'm like, I don't feel like I fit a lot of the time. So, and I think everyone has that at some point. I used to not be able to grasp certain concepts because the question was always like, why is it this? And I could feel very early on that just as sensitivity parts of me, I used to fall asleep in the mornings a lot, like on the front desk, like in front of the teacher, like drooling, and my best friend was like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm sleepy, I don't care. Really. But I think outside of school, I had I guess a lot of opportunities. Karate was one of them. I had an older brother growing up, so I have an older brother and an older sister. But the influence of an older brother, like watching Rocky and Rambo and doing all of these tomboyish kind of things.
Actually,
and
Rocky was another favorite.
all like 7 of them or something. I remember we had all the CDs. And I really enjoyed, I think, just trying new things. But the one thing that was constant for me was teaching. So I used to ask my parents to get me like the blackboard and the chalk.
Yeah.
And I used to like teach to my imaginary class and like speak and give like speeches and things.
Yep.
And that was always a constant and a theme that has threaded throughout my life.
Do you know what inspired that? Was there a teacher or a movie that you saw? I don't know. Yeah. Or it was just in you?
I think it was in me because I think for as long as I can remember, I've had that kind of innate thing in me.
Yeah.
And I remember I was very young, might have been either like 12 or 15 years of age when I asked mum to take me to a public speaking course. And that was my first kind of like thing at public speaking. So it's pretty much something I've done all my life. It's something that I've been passionate about, interested in. And again, not a lot of people might relate, but those two things have always kind of been a common thread for me growing up.
That's amazing. And were there certain subjects that you like gravitated to, or?
Science, English, and environment studies.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, I suppose the situation is a bit different over there in that, after year 10, you need to pick a specialty, and then good luck to you.
Yeah. Figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, there's only 3 choices really: science, arts, or commerce.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the time. I think there's more choices now, I hope.
Yeah.
Because like IB and
True.
all of that. But yeah.
What did you pick?
I picked arts.
Oh, wow.
But I was very confused between arts and science.
Yeah.
And these are like 2 very different worlds. So I picked arts and my subjects were logic, French, political science, and psychology.
That's a hell of a mix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I loved all of them except economics. I didn't do great in that.
And was there any? It's a common thread, coming from Indian cultures, especially just pressure from the outside world, from parents, all of that. Was there any pushing or prodding in certain directions?
Again, I'm like the most unrelatable Indian. because, and I'm going to say this to the camera, if mom and dad ever listen or see this, thank you. But they never put that pressure on me. Wow. Ever. Yeah. And sometimes I wish they did a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, you could have just like, pushed me a little bit harder.
Yeah.
But no, they were like very big on personal responsibility of you decide what to do. Like even my subjects, what I picked in college, the stream that I picked, I moved from arts in junior college to business management in senior college. But there was no like, oh, why are you doing this? Or you should be doing this. There was like, suggestions and conversations, but it was never like, you should be this or you should get a 98. I remember distinctly one morning where I was always like the one who studied the night before.
Yeah.
And I'm like, last minute.
Yep.
But I slept through the night.
That's something we can relate
before my exam.
Yeah.
You did that as well. Oh my gosh. Like so stressful.
Still get nightmares about that.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It was really stressful. And then like I slept through the night and I woke up crying because I'm like, and I went to mom. I'm like, Mom, I haven't studied anything. I'm going to fail. I don't know anything. And she's like, it's okay. It's not a big deal. And I'm like, I'm so grateful for that. And even my dad, he was like super chill about it.
Yeah.
And he actually always, there's this one time when I was very, very young, he said, you're a natural leader. And I think that's kind of like those micro moments really got ingrained in me.
Yeah, and those are so important.
Oh, absolutely. Core memories.
Yeah.
And, despite all the struggles that they'd been through, they did their best to kind of empower me to make my own decisions.
Yeah.
And I learned by making many, many wrong decisions, but I wouldn't have it any other way because I wouldn't be where I am without those decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You sure your parents are Indian?
They are. Very much.
That I think is really special. And I think, so for me, it wasn't overt pressure, but I would definitely was pushed towards science and then engineering, which is almost cliched now. you know.
What did you pick in college?
I did science
Yeah.
in Xavier's, and then I think had a bit of a rough time there. And like I said, as we were starting this conversation, I had a really tough time in year 12. Didn't end up passing year 12. And then that's how I came to Australia, had to redo year 12.
Yeah.
And then thankfully did really well then, and then got into engineering.
Yeah.
So then after your year 12, what was your decision space like? What were you thinking? Yeah.
Probably one of the most confusing decisions ever for someone who's, that young and is like, oh my God, I have to decide what I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And that really freaked me out. So I knew two things. I knew that I never wanted to do a 9 to 5. That was very early on. I didn't even have the concept of a 9 to 5 because no one in my everyone in my family and extended family are entrepreneurs.
Okay.
So I didn't know anyone who went to a 9 to 5, but I knew I didn't want to do that.
Can I ask what your parents did for work?
Yeah. So my dad is an entrepreneur. We have a business in dry fruits and spices.
Nice.
And he also lost his father at a very young age. So very much self-made man, built himself up. My mom's a yoga teacher, which I'm sure we'll talk about later in the conversation because I followed that path after her. And everyone in my extended family does business. My sister has her own garment clothing line in Dubai. My brother also runs my family business. So
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No. What was I saying?
You're saying about the decision space around year 12.
Yeah, I was so confused. So I knew that, and I knew I loved psychology. I loved it. I can still remember the pages of my textbook and the notes that I wrote, and my teacher, amazing. So good. And the importance of a teacher, a good teacher, can really shape a student. So that is so underrated.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, you know what? I want to do business. So I was like, I'm going to do Bachelor's of Business Management. And I picked that. So I changed from arts into business. And I think it really complemented what I'd learned about psychology. And, like I loved French as well. I love languages. And I'm so glad I did, because it was like new college, new group of friends, new experiences, new people. And again, learned so much. There was like 36 subjects over 3 years or something. Yeah.
Wow. And was yoga always part of your life, being that your mom was a teacher? And
Yeah, from very early on.
Yeah.
So I, witnessed her going to the Yoga Institute, which is one of the world's oldest yoga schools. It's in
near
Mumbai.
where my family lives, actually.
In Santa Cruz.
In Santa Cruz.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so have you been there as well?
No.
Okay. Well, you'll have to go. It's changed a lot since I was last there. But I saw her go, and when I was, again, I would say early teens, she, had raised 3 wonderful children. And she was in a space where, where a lot of, I guess, mums can relate, where, feeling this sense of where's my identity, I imagine. And she took up the yoga teacher training course as a form of self-development and self-improvement. And initially I was like, oh my God, you're leaving me. I'm not going to have you around in the evenings because you're going to be in school, and what's going to happen to me? And I was like, oh my God, I'm like resenting this. I used to call it stupid yoga.
Yeah.
But then I saw the change it had in her. Mentally, physically, emotionally. She became happier. She became fitter. She became healthier in all ways. And, she used to get these games from the school and we used to play together. I used to see her practice at home. And I think by doing that, she embodied what that meant. And I didn't realize it at the time.
Yep.
So once I finished my graduation, once I finished my bachelor's, it almost felt natural for me to enroll in the yoga teacher training course, because I'd been to so many of those like kids' school camps and all of these things. And it just was very natural. It was like, I didn't even have to decide that. When I had to decide the subject, it was kind of like, I'm just going to do this. And I did. And I did a 900-hour teacher training course.
Wow.
So it was 80-90% philosophy,
Yep.
very little postures and poses.
Yep.
And again, we could probably have a whole different episode on that, on how yoga has been served as a very physical practice, but it's anything but.
Yep.
It's a way of life.
Yeah. Again, a big question, but how has that philosophy kind of informed the work that you do right now?
It founded the work that I do.
Okay.
It didn't, it shaped it.
Yep.
It shaped the way I think, feel, believe, and show up in the world. And with a combination of, the strong values that my family placed in me through, family systems and faith and all of these things, I think yoga, learning yoga, especially yoga philosophy and concepts and texts, really shaped a very strong, solid foundation. And I would not be where I am without it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. So maybe going back to, you finishing your bachelor's, what was your first work experience like? Like what was that job?
Oh my God. Pretty sure I tutored one of my cousin's kids or something. So it was like a very informal thing.
Yep.
I taught yoga. My first yoga students were primary school kids.
Oh, cute.
Which was the best. Oh my God, it was incredible. Would absolutely do it again.
And what next? Like what after that?
After that, I had an arranged marriage. I moved to Australia.
There you go.
I'd never been to Australia.
Wow.
So yeah, I moved. And
was your husband already based here, or?
Yeah, my ex-husband.
Oh, your ex-husband.
He was,
Sorry.
yes,
Yeah.
he was based here
Yeah.
in Canberra. So he was from India. He was studying, and then I moved. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
What was that like?
That was interesting. And look, my siblings have arranged marriages, and I would say there's a lot of stereotype and stigma around arranged marriages. But I feel like every relationship is so different.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have moved to Australia had it not been for that experience. And unfortunately, it turned financially abusive, which also meant that I had to navigate a series of life experiences at a very young age. I was very, very young. But it also informed me in my passion for financial well-being for women, which is a part of what I do today as well. And it kind of taught me what it means to be really financially literate, empowered, and independent.
Sure.
And I've always been such a hyper independent person. And I think that experience and then coming out from there, I lived my best life, you know, and that self-confidence, it's called Aishwarya in Sanskrit, the inner self-confidence that comes, you know, through, you know, forbearance, through difficult times. I wouldn't trade that for anything. And I think we also need to destigmatize divorce in South Asian communities, especially. And it was an experience that I'm grateful for. Yeah, because it taught me the things that I know now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you working at the time, or was the...
I've always worked since I moved to Australia, like, you know, very much the migrant kind of journey where I didn't know any better. I didn't have any mentors or guides. The amount of resources that exist now, oh gosh, I wish I had that back then.
Yeah.
I was a smart young woman with a bachelor's degree, a 900-hour teacher training under my belt. The world was literally my oyster. But I didn't have any guidance, resources, or even the fact that I should go out and seek these people. So I think a natural progression, because my ex at the time was in a similar industry, went into hospitality to get my foot in through the door. And so I kind of climbed up the ladder per se. So started working in like cafes and things. And then I worked with like a chocolate bar, which I was really like excited about. Basically hounded the manager to give me the job because I'm like, this is my Charlie and the Chocolate Factory dream. Oh my gosh, that job cost me a tooth because I ate those like chocolate waffles like almost every day. And I'm like, oh gosh, this is not good. So I'm like, I will lose all my teeth if I continue this job. But I progressed very quickly into manager position over there. So I'm like, okay, I know my shit. Like I know what I'm doing. So then quit that and then moved to Melbourne where I went into retail with an activewear brand. I was there for 7 years. So that's what really kind of guided a lot of my formative, I guess, professional development, upskilling, getting to know really the Australian work culture per se, through the retail lens, through the leadership lens. And that's where I really found my love for facilitation. Because I went...
The inner teacher in you.
The inner teacher in me. Like, I've always been a teacher. I will always be a teacher at heart. But when I guess, again, you know, climbed up through the ranks and then I started doing training globally and locally. So I was their first global South Asian employee resource group chair. And that really formed that intersection of the impact that training, leadership development, facilitation, as well as advocacy can have of that real life impact. So, for example, during COVID-19 crisis in India, we had so many South Asians around the world in the employee group that were basically feeling helpless, myself included, couldn't fly there. You know, lots of people were basically not doing great.
Especially like Delta was vicious over there.
Exactly. And it was like quite disheartening. So we had a listening session and then negotiated a $200,000 US donation to charities doing work on ground in India. And that's where I saw firsthand of like my position power, title, advocacy, what I say can have real life impact on real people.
Yeah, wow.
And that was kind of like a really big wake up call for me.
Yeah.
And I had a great time, learned a lot.
Yeah.
But I think that was the time where I realized that I could be doing something outside of, the confines of an organization.
Yeah.
And I'd always wanted to do something myself. Yeah.
But that's that inner confidence you were talking about. Yeah. It seems that is something innate in you. Would I be right in saying that?
It is. I would
Yeah.
say I'm innately a very confident person. Unfortunately, however, a lot of experiences have sometimes made me question that, which I think is natural.
Yeah.
That self-doubt creeps in, I guess some really negative experiences as well, with some negative-ish people, which haven't been great. So I've been kind of beaten down, but like you say, fall 7 times, get up 8.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
and don't stop. Yeah,
Yeah.
persevere.
I wonder, what would you say to someone who does not have that innate confidence, but maybe is looking for something or has this impact that they want to create, but that is holding them back?
Everything you need is within you. And it might sound cheesy, but there's a yoga sutra I always come back to. When you're feeling conflicted, confused, the sutra goes, tapas swadhyay ishwar pranidhan. And I mentioned it when we first met as well, that you more often than not, you need either of these 3 things or a combination of. Tapas is that inner forbearance, the perseverance to keep going no matter what. Just take the smallest next step that you feel is accessible to you. Okay? It'll be scary, but you just have to do it, because if not you, who else? And then there's swadhyay, which is self-awareness, self-knowledge, knowing when to stop, knowing when to rest, knowing when to cut your losses. I've started so many things that I haven't followed through. And you have this thing of like, oh, am I giving up?
Yeah.
No, you learned something and then you moved on.
Yep.
I started my PhD in yoga actually before I moved to Australia, and I was like, okay, this is not for me. And then I happened to move, so I also couldn't complete it. But it's fine. It's okay to know. And as long as you learn something about yourself, it's okay to cut your losses.
Yep.
And it's also knowledge of yourself. Is this fear or is this an actual reality, which makes you stop?
Sure.
And then the last one is Ishwar Pranidhan. If you're someone who's spiritual or believes in a higher power, it's surrendering to a higher reality and knowing that is what you're trying to achieve bigger than you, and then trying to surrender to that. Acceptance, detachment, letting go, all of these wonderful qualities, which I feel are very underrated. And I feel we place a lot of importance on ourselves because of the ego.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny you should mention that, because I came across this quote by the poet William Blake, and it goes something like, "A fool that persists in his folly eventually becomes wise."
That's a nice one.
Yeah, and that really got me for some reason, because to me it is about persistence, but the way he closes that quote and by saying wise, like wise is also knowing when to stop, when to pivot, when your ambition is creating a burden for someone else.
Absolutely.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that answer, by the way. I think, and I can see how, I think firstly, this yoga and the philosophy is in you, and how you speak about it, and, informs the work that you do. But also I think I relate to it, because to me, that's what meaning is about. Like, meaning is not about kind of happiness, or it's about perseverance. It's about the pain you go through in achieving something.
Yeah.
And also, I think the last point of what you said, it's to do with service. Like, what are you contributing to? Are you contributing to something that's bigger than yourself?
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If we're not attached, I guess not too attached, because you still need to have goals.
Yep.
But I feel like if we place too much of a self-importance, you'll just get caught up in the lessons or the failures that you're like trying to overcome, and you'll make that a part of your identity rather than thinking, okay, there's a bigger purpose to this. Yeah.
Yep. And so you were for 7 years with this activewear brand, which shall remain nameless. A big global activewear brand that, like Prince, is now recognized by a symbol.
Say no more.
So that realization came when you, I think, engineered this global movement that you wanted to do something for yourself. What was your next step then after that realization?
Yeah, I always wanted to do something for myself. Like it's that, like, you know, it's in it's in the blood, the Guju blood. Like always wanting to do business. I'd always had that entrepreneurial streak in me, but I think it's just kind of like you're just busy trying to check boxes, and then I'm like, oh, this is actually not what I want to do long term. Okay, what is? And I think 2020 was that. I think placeholder for a lot of people where we questioned our existence, what life meant, what we placed value in, and that work is not our identity. And that really shifted a lot of things. And I got a domain. I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but got a name, got a domain. And I simmered, ideated, researched so much in all the spare time that we had, which we had a lot of during Melbourne lockdown. And it was incredible.
What came up during those brainstorming or during those sessions? Was there anything that that sparked something?
I think rather than a spark, it was kind of like a slow simmer, and then it was just kind of like not appeared out of nowhere, but it was a long, slow simmer too. So I knew everything I knew about yoga, and I knew it's such a natural part of me. I knew I had foundations in psychology, business management, knowing how people think, behave, work, a lot of it, and facilitating so much training through my work. I knew that brought me joy. It brought me fulfillment. I was good at it, and it sparked something in me. And I really enjoyed doing it because time just became non-existent when I was doing it. So I knew it was something along those lines and the intersections. And then doing more research and everything else, it was kind of like the conversation at the intersection of diversity and inclusion, which again became like a huge thing in 2020. But I had on my goals from like 2017 when not a lot of people even knew what DEI was. And then the combination of that with well-being, because that was also becoming a bigger conversation, which I could almost foresee becoming such a big deal. And it's, you know, one of those things where, why isn't anyone talking about this? And I'm just going to do that. And I think that, again, is something that I recognize in myself of patterns of two seemingly unrelated things that might not occur naturally. So then I decided to, operate at that intersection of the dialogue between well-being and inclusion and leadership and facilitation and psychology and business and all of those things. And that's how Allied Collective was born.
Yeah, amazing. So what is Allied Collective today?
As of today, and I hope it continues to evolve every single day, which it has been. Allied Collective is a training organization. It is Australia's first inclusive wellbeing and facilitation practice. So we help facilitate a better future through trainings and workshops that are not boring, that are engaging,
Yep.
that challenge people, but with humanity.
One thing that really stood out for me when I first met you and you spoke at that event, shout out to the Sari Club, um, was how you described burnout, because that was like, because I've experienced burnout and I was like, you nailed it.
What was in it that stood out for you?
The values, the conflict in values. And I was working as a strategy consultant for this small company and it didn't feel right. And I was pushing against that every day.
Yeah.
So if you wouldn't mind just stating that definition again of if it comes to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Burnout, we think, is a solo responsibility. I think we live in such a hyper individualized society, and the way we look at things, especially well-being, that burnout is my responsibility and it's my fault. But when we look at it, well-being, and in this case burnout, is a collective issue and a collective responsibility. And we come from collectivist cultures, so it's, I guess, easier for us to recognize that. But burnout happens when there's a misalignment between what you're doing, the systems that exist that perpetuate discrepancies within your values and what you do. It's a systematic failure of things happening around you and is a byproduct of things that are failing. And a lot of it could be internal and a lot of it could be external as well. But I genuinely believe, and at its heart, Allied Collective's principle is that everyone deserves to be well. But well-being has not been created equitably for everyone. And well-being just doesn't mean, being physically well and eating healthy food, although that's important, and doing yoga and meditation. But your environmental well-being, your social well-being, loneliness being such a huge problem in our society across the world, and things like digital well-being, financial well-being, occupational well-being, which is work. And how do we kind of balance those things in us? And burnout isn't when, all of them are 0 out of 10, for example. There's no expectation for it to be 10 out of 10. But to the extent with which it doesn't align with your core values, like you said, when you were working, and it felt like, you're just pushing and pushing, and it just feels like you're like trying to pour from an empty cup, really.
Exactly.
Yeah. What was that like for you?
It felt like there's the Greek legend of Sisyphus, where he's pushing the rock up the hill only for it to fall back down again. That's what it felt like. It felt like pushing the rock up the hill to fall back down again, and doing that repeatedly. Also, this values piece is a hard one to, I think, put into words, because it was a very distinct feeling that I can't articulate.
What did it feel like in your body?
Tense, like kind of maybe something that was wrong. It felt that this is not who I am.
Like it feels depleting.
Yes.
And like, this is not you. I don't feel like myself.
And depleting, and not the opposite of depleting, which the word is escaping me, but replenishing. So it was just depleting, and then more depleting, and then more depleting. Until, also, I think the best maybe physical example that I've seen of burnout, is, I don't know if you've seen that Simone Biles documentary on Netflix, The Gymnast.
I haven't yet. Yeah, I want to watch it.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And in the first episode, she's at the Tokyo Olympics, I think. And she's like, I can't do this. Like even the simplest movements were impossible for her. And that's what I felt like. Sending an email was like this massive mountain I had to climb.
Yeah.
And then, well, she quit the Olympics, and then there was a whole, controversy around that. But then she went and just started to have fun with gymnastics again, just tumbling and playing.
Yeah.
And that's how she slowly recovered, and then killed it in Paris.
Yeah. It's so interesting when we make work our central identity and we make it our whole life, and then forget that basically the world and everything around us constantly bombards us with silent and not so silent messages that you are not worthy if you are not producing or consuming.
Yeah.
You're not allowed. And the last time, you just sat there and you had nothing to do, no screens, no books, no sensory input, you almost feel like a sense of panic.
Yeah.
What am I doing with myself? How can I rest more productively? I had that.
There's an oxymoron.
Literally, right? And how funny is that world that we're living in?
Yeah. Yeah, because it's so true that it's almost like a competition we have with ourselves, that I need to, what am I producing? Like, I need to be doing something.
Yep.
Yeah. How do you battle that within yourself? Because you seem to be, you have your own company now and you're doing this amazing work. How do you deal with that in a sense?
Many existential crises. Many mentee bees, mental breakdowns. I call them mentee bees. And like, there's this misnomer that well-being and yoga, it has healing and it has to be all zen and meditating and like all of that. No, it's chaotic. Healing is not linear. We know this. It's chaotic. It's facing all of the inner self-doubt, self-talk that you don't want to have and you keep avoiding. But as long as you keep suppressing it, it's just going to keep coming up. And I was faced with that when I took the leap almost 2 years ago now, when I went full-time with Allied. So I had like a little part-time gig and then went into Allied full-time. And this thing of, who am I outside a paycheck? Yes, I'm building this business, but there's no consistent paycheck. Oh my goodness. And that panic was real. Honestly, lots of, I guess, coping mechanisms, all, across a range of seeking support. My husband's super supportive, friends that are amazing, people close to me. I call them my like personal board of directors, leaning on, yoga as a practice to center me, to ground me, and also to allow myself to be in that uncertainty. I think that was a huge thing that kind of helped me through that.
Yeah. And I think for myself as well, like, uncertainty is such a scary space to be in. But it's really, I think, being calm in that and almost befriending uncertainty, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That I think for myself as well, it's not an easy thing to grasp. It's something you need to experience, and maybe you need to fall down and keep getting up.
Yep. Yeah, like it's not going to be calm all the time. Sometimes it does look like very chaotic, very ugly, but it's recognizing that that's okay and allowing yourself. People say, meet people where they are. But I ask, are you meeting yourself where you are?
So what's next for Allied Collective?
Ooh, such an exciting question. I think I'm in like this very energized, exciting space with Allied right now. And we're doing some incredible things. And I'm so proud of how it's evolved and continues to evolve. it looks like very much, I think, centering and zoning in on the purpose of facilitating a better future through human connection, through engaging workshops, trainings, for all of the AI hype out there. And I do like AI and I do see the benefits. I don't think anything can replace human connection, human curiosity, and just that in-person joy and spark that you have. One of my favorite things about facilitating workshops or public speaking or whatever I'm doing is seeing this shift or aha moment in people where they've either discovered something new about someone, something, or themselves.
Yep.
And the same goes for me. And that's why I love being a teacher, whether it's yoga or anything else. And it's also looking at embodying and incorporating yoga philosophy to a great extent in the things that I do. Yeah.
We began this conversation, saying that we're both from Bombay and how Bombay is a state of mind or an emotion. Do you bring that emotion to your work, like the Bombay?
That is such a good question. I do.
Yeah.
I think there's this like cheeky, boisterous, flamboyant, unapologetic streak that I have. I don't know if it's me, but it's a combination, I guess, me being the Bombay gal. That will always be. And that I think that's what makes me me. And that's why, I mean, not to sound like immodest, but no one else can do what I do because it's me.
And I think just from this conversation, pulling a few threads, it's almost like you're a combination of, say, your dad who's the entrepreneur and your mom, the yoga teacher, the chaos of Bombay, your inner teacher. That's what Allied Collective is.
Absolutely, And my hope is that it keeps growing and people benefit. And I think that's the crux of it. It's just what you were saying, the service of helping create a better future, whatever that looks like. And even if it's one person that benefits, that's kind of my work done.
I think as you move with Allied Collective and as it keeps growing, do you see that is there anything you need to stop doing?
That's such a good question. And immediately I would say self-doubt. But then I also think a healthy amount of self-doubt is necessary. I think a lot of people need to have more self-doubt. No, just kidding. No, I think a healthy amount of it. But sometimes I can get very caught up in the pursuit of perfectionism, which is overrated and it doesn't exist. And I know that, but it's also reminding myself of that. And also reminding myself, it's an old quote, but I think a recent reminder has been, we judge ourselves by our intentions, but others by their actions. And also always coming back to stating and communicating your intentions. And I would like to believe the best in people.
Well, Ruhee, this has been amazing. One final question.
Yes.
This podcast is called Finding Meaning in Work. What does the term meaningful work mean to you?
I think meaningful work, firstly, I would say, is not centering your identity around work. And then it's meaningful work is fulfilling, it's joyful, it's hard, it's challenging. It's when you're better today than you were the day before. And I think we all find meanings in such different and amazing ways. And I think it's constantly being in that curious space and open enough to being inspired and open enough. And I wish that for myself and hopefully everyone, if there was one gift I could give, was the ability to hold space for being wrong.
Ruhee, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much for having me. This
so
was
appreciate
incredible.
it.
I want to ask you a question.
Sure, go for it.
What have you learned from all the conversations that you've had on your podcast?
Yeah.
Besides, obviously great conversations with great people.
Yep.
What have you learned?
I think firstly, when it comes to work, it's especially meaningful work. That's why I kind of start from your childhood and kind of weave my way through. There's usually some experience in childhood that really influences what meaningful work is later on in life.
Yeah.
And it's also, I think, finding that combination within yourself, like your skills, your values, your talents, your experiences, your traumas.
Yeah.
What's the combination of that can bring value to other people?
Yeah.
I think that's the big lesson for me. You're my 36th interview
Amazing.
now, so.
To many more.
Yes,
I'm sure.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. If you're enjoying and are learning from this podcast, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. A great zero-cost way to support us is to leave a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you are feeling extra generous, it'd be great if you could leave a comment or feedback on our Apple Podcast or YouTube pages. Or you could email your comments and feedback to me directly at rahul@disruptivebusinessnetwork.com. That's RAHUL @disruptivebusinessnetwork, all one word.com. Finally, a big shout out to our producer Dan Scahill for his work on the keys and to Vashti Civil for writing the original music for our theme. Until next time, this is your host, Rahul Sohn, signing off.